A kind-hearted black teen generously helped an elderly woman fix her TV without asking for anything in return. The next day, to his surprise, she arrived at his home with the police. Jamal was the kind of boy whose heart was always in the right place. Helping others came naturally to him. So when he noticed that old Miss Clark was struggling with her TV, he didn't think twice before stepping in. Even though he knew he should head straight home after school to care for his younger siblings, he just couldn't walk away from the elderly woman's request. "Let me help you with that, ma'am," he offered with a warm smile. What Jamal didn't realize, with this small gesture of kindness was about to trigger a series of events that would forever alter the course of his life. The moment he decided to help Miss Clark, he unknowingly set in motion a chain of circumstances that would test his character and reveal just how profound the impact of a single act of kindness could be. Mrs. Clark, her silver hair framing a gentle face, sighed in relief and welcomed him inside. Now, as Jamal tinkered with the TV, they began talking, and pretty soon a warm conversation flowed between them. Miss Clark started sharing stories from her life, reminiscing about her days as a school teacher. Now, she spent 30 years teaching elementary school kids, and her voice was filled with passion as she recalled those years. Now, her stories were rich in funny moments and memories of students, some of whom Jamal even recognized. Jamal listened closely, genuinely captivated by her stories. Now, hearing about the world from a teacher's perspective instead of a student's was something new and intriguing for him. "What did you teach mostly?" Jamal asked, his curiosity piqued. "Mostly third grade," Mrs. Clark replied with a nostalgic smile. Now, those kids were always so full of energy and curiosity. I've watched many of them grow up and find success in their own ways. Living in this community for so long has allowed me to see them flourish, which is one of the greatest joys. Jamal could easily imagine how rewarding it must have been for her to play such a significant role in their lives. He thought about his own teachers and how they had shaped him. It was clear that Miss Clark had been much more than just a teacher. She'd been a mentor and a guide to many kids. After he fixed the TV, Miss Clark offered Jamal a glass of lemonade. Now they sat together on the porch enjoying the warm afternoon in each other's company. "You know, Jamal," Mrs. Clark said thoughtfully, "young people like you give me hope for the future. Your kindness today has made a world of difference to me." As Jamal walked home, he felt a warm glow in his heart. What he'd done for Mrs. Clark seemed like a simple act, but it had brought happiness to both of them. Now, he had no idea that this small gesture of kindness would soon lead to unexpected events that would change his life in ways that he could never have imagined. When Jamal arrived home, he was greeted by the sound of laughter and the clatter of dishes in the kitchen. His younger siblings, Aisha and Malik, was playing a game on the living room floor, their giggles filling the house with joy. His mama, tired after a long shift at the hospital, was at the stove cooking dinner. Now, the comfort and aroma of her famous chicken stew filled the air, wrapping Jamal in a sense of home and warmth. "Hey, Mama," Jamal called out as he dropped his backpack by the door and walked into the kitchen. Now, he gave his mama a quick hug. "How was work?" Miss Washington's face, etched with the lines of a long day, softened as she smiled at her oldest son. "It was a long day, but I'm managing," she replied, her voice warm despite her fatigue. Jamal's days was long too. After school, he usually went straight to his part-time job at a grocery store, where he spent hours stocking shelves and helping customers until late in the afternoon. On weekends, he mowed lawns and took on odd jobs for neighbors to earn some extra cash. Even with all these responsibilities, Jamal never complained. He saw it as his way of supporting his family and lightening the load on his mama. At night, after his siblings was asleep, Jamal would stay up late studying. He dreamed of going to college, maybe even becoming an engineer. Now, the thought of making his mama proud and creating a better life for Aisha and Malik kept him motivated, no matter how exhausted he felt. Now, each day he pushed forward, driven by the desire to secure a brighter future for his family. The next morning, the household was full of its normal hustle and bustle. Jamal was getting ready for school, helping Aisha and Malik with their backpacks, while Miss Washington prepared breakfast. The routine was suddenly interrupted by the distant wail of sirens growing louder as they approached a street. Jamal glanced out the window, his heart skipping a beat when he saw two police cruisers pull up in front of their house. Now concerned, Jamal stepped outside, where curious neighbors were already beginning to gather. Now, the police officers emerged from their vehicles, and to Jamal's shock, Miss Clark stepped out of one of the cars, looking around nervously. "Mrs. Clark?" Jamal called out, confusion and worry tingling in his voice. Now, Miss Clark's face lightened up when she saw him. She walked toward him, flanked by the officers. Now, across the fence, neighbors exchanged whispers, their eyes fixed on the unfolding scene. Just then, Miss Washington hurried out of the house, her face etched with concern. Now, she quickly ushered in the younger kids back inside before rushing to Jamal's side, anxiously tightening her grip on his arm as she faced the unexpected situation. "Is everything okay, Miss Clark?" Jamal asked, his voice filled with concern. Miss Clark appeared nervous as she explained that something troubling had happened and she needed to talk to him and his family. And once they was all seated at the living room, she began to share her story. After Jamal had helped her with her TV the day before, she noticed her wallet was missing. Now, at first, she thought she might have misplaced it, but after searching everywhere, she couldn't find it. With a heavy heart, she asked, "Did you take it?" The question hung in the air like a shadow, and Jamal felt a heavy pit form in his stomach. "No, Miss Clark, I didn't take your wallet, I promise," he replied, his voice steady but filled with shock. One of the officers, sensing the tension, stepped in to calm the situation. Now, he gently asked Jamal to explain exactly what had happened when he helped Miss Clark. Jamal took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts, and recounted the events of the previous day in detail. He described how he had fixed the TV, engaged in conversation with Miss Clark, and then headed straight home. He firmly insisted that he hadn't seen or taken a wallet. Miss Clark listened intently, her expression a mix of doubt and sadness. "I don't want to believe it, Jamal. You seem like such a nice boy, but I can't ignore that my wallet went missing right after you helped me," she said, her voice trembling slightly. Jamal's heart sank. He'd only wanted to help, and now he found himself accused of something that he hadn't done. Now, he met Miss Clark's eyes in full of sincerity, and he repeated, "I didn't see her take your wallet, Miss Clark. There must be another explanation." The officers exchanged thoughtful glances. "We'll need to conduct a search of the house just to be thorough," one of them said, his tone professional yet understanding. With a nod from Jamal's mama, the officers began their search. They moved through each room methodically, checking every corner for any sign of the missing wallet. Jamal and his family stood by, tense and uneasy. They knew the wallet wouldn't be found, but the ordeal was humiliating nonetheless. Time seemed to stretch endlessly as they waited. Now, finally, after what felt like hours, the officers completed their search and returned to the living room empty-handed. "We didn't find anything," one of the officers said. "We'll keep looking into it and let you know if we have any new information." News of the incident quickly spread through the close-knit community. Now, it wasn't long before everybody seemed to have their own opinion about what had happened between Jamal and Miss Clark. Reactions varied wildly. Now, some neighbors quickly jumped to conclusions, whispering among themselves and casting some suspicious looks at Jamal. Miss Peterson, who lived just 2 doors down, was among the first to openly express her doubts. "Now, I always thought Jamal was a good kid," she said to her friend over the fence. "But you never really know, do you? It's a big coincidence that he helped Miss Clark and then her wallet went missing." Others in the community were more supportive and refused to believe that Jamal could be involved in any wrongdoing. Mr. Rodriguez, a retired mechanic who had known Jamal since he was a kid, shook his head when he heard the news. "That boy wouldn't hurt a fly. He's always been helpful and respectful. This has got to be a misunderstanding." Jamal's friends stood by him as well. Marcus, his best friend, was especially vocal about his support. "There's no way Jamal did this," Marcus said to anybody who would listen. "He's the most honest person I know. This whole thing is just wrong." At school, Jamal's classmates was buzzing with gossip. Now, some students believed Miss Clark's claim, while others firmly defended Jamal. Now, after class, Mrs. Green, his history teacher, pulled him aside. "Jamal, I know this must be difficult for you, but I believe in your honesty. Stay strong and the truth will come out." Now, even with support from his friends and family, Jamal couldn't shake the feeling of being under intense scrutiny. As he walked down the street, he felt the weight of judgment from everybody who doubted him. It was a harsh reminder of how quickly trust could be lost. One evening, a group of neighbors gathered at the local community center for a meeting to discuss the recent events involving Jamal and Miss Clark. Now, the atmosphere in the room grew tense as people voiced their opinions. Now, Miss Clark was also present. Now, she appeared frail and tired as she stood up to speak to the crowd. "I've been part of this community for many years," Miss Clark said. "Now, I've always believed in the goodness of my neighbors. The situation with my wallet has been very upsetting, but I don't want to accuse anyone without good reason. Jamal has always been a respectful young man." Her words created a brief silence in the room. Now, some people nodded in agreement while others still had doubts. The meeting concluded with a decision to support both Miss Clark and Jamal while the police investigation continued. Now, it was a small step toward mending the rift the incident had caused in the community. As days went by, the police continued their investigation. They spoke with neighbors and retraced Miss Clark's steps. The Washington family clung to the hope that the investigation would eventually clear Jamal's name. In the meantime, they supported one another through the uncertainty. Now, one afternoon, Jamal was helping his siblings with their homework in the living room. Malik, who was quite good with technology for his age, was playing on his tablet after finishing his assignments. He enjoyed exploring the internet and was always interested in the latest trends and videos. "Hey Jamal, come look at this," Malik called out, his eyes with excitement. Now Jamal walked over to see what had caught his brother's attention. Malik was watching a video on a popular social media app. Now the video featured a group of kids from the neighborhood, including Kevin, a well-known troublemaker. In the footage, Kevin was holding up a wallet and bragging about how he'd taken it from an old lady. "Look at this," Kevin boasted in the video. "I grabbed this wallet from that old lady and she didn't even notice." Now Jamal's heart raced as he watched the video. This was the evidence they needed to clear up the whole misunderstanding. Now he quickly grabbed Malik's tablet and ran to show his mom. Now Miss Washington watched the video, then grabbed her keys and told Jamal they needed to go to the police. When they arrived at the station, Officer Daniels greeted them, then they showed him the video. "This changes everything," Officer Daniels said after watching. "We'll need to look into this further, but it seems like we found the real culprit." The police quickly turned their attention to Kevin and his friends. Now they went to Kevin's house and his parents were shocked when they saw the video. Kevin was brought in for questioning and he soon admitted to stealing Miss Clark's wallet. Now the news spread quickly throughout the neighborhood and many were stunned that Kevin would do something so low. With Kevin's confession, Jamal's name was completely cleared. Now the suspicion that had weighed on him for so long was finally gone. Miss Clark came to the Washington home again, this time by herself. "Jamal, I can't thank you enough for what you and your family have done," she said. "I'm so sorry for everything you went through." The neighborhood came together to support Jamal and his family. Now the situation had not only cleared Jamal's name, but also showed the importance of supporting each other through tough times. Mr. Rodriguez organized a small community gathering to celebrate the resolution of the incident. As the sun set, Jamal looked around at the familiar faces and felt grateful for the lessons that he had learned and the support that he'd received. The experience had changed him for the better. It had made him more empathetic and more determined to stand up for what was right. In the weeks after the wallet incident was resolved, life started to return to normal for Jamal and his family. However, the impact of what happened stayed with everybody, especially Mrs. Clark, and she felt a deep sense of guilt for wrongfully accusing Jamal. A few days later, the Washington family got an invitation to a community meeting at the local school auditorium. Now, they was both curious and also a little bit nervous. When they arrived, they saw many familiar faces as everybody settled into their seats. And Miss Clark took the stage, holding a microphone and smiling warmly at the crowd. "Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming. I've got an important announcement to make tonight." She looked over at Jamal. "Many of you know about the recent mix-up involving Jamal Washington and me. I wrongfully accused him of taking my wallet, but thanks to his patience, kindness, and honesty, the truth has come out." The audience murmured in agreement and showed their support for Jamal. Now, Mrs. Clark spoke with deep emotion. "Jamal's actions reminded me of how important our community is and the potential every young person has. To honor his character and support others like him, I've set up the Jamal Washington Scholarship Fund." The crowd gasped and cheered as Mrs. Clark continued. "This fund will give financial help to Jamal and other deserving students in our community. It will assist them in reaching their educational goals and creating a better future." Jamal's eyes widened in disbelief, and then Miss Clark smiled at him. "Jamal, you've shown us what it means to be a true leader. This is my way of thanking you and making sure that your kindness continues to inspire others." The room burst into applause. Now, Jamal stood up with tears in his eyes, overwhelmed by the recognition and generosity. The scholarship would make his dreams of a better future come true and open doors he had only ever hoped for. It was all way too much for him to fully grasp at the moment. The announcement of the Jamal Washington Scholarship Fund sparked a wave of celebration in the community. Now, the school auditorium was buzzing with excitement. Neighbors, friends, and family gathered around Jamal, congratulating him and praising his resilience and character. His family felt a deep sense of relief and pride. Ms. Washington hugged her son tightly, tears of joy streaming down her face. She understood just how much this meant for their future. "You've always made me proud, Jamal, but today you've shown everybody what I've always known. You have a heart of gold." Now, his little brother and his sister looked at Jamal with admiration. Now, they hugged him and told him that he was their hero. The celebration continued into the evening with laughter, stories, and a feeling of togetherness. The community, once divided by misunderstanding, had come closer, all because of kindness and support. As the night came to an end, Jamal stood with his family, looking at the faces of friends and neighbors. And he knew that together, they could face any challenge. The future was bright, not just for him, but for everybody who believed in kindness and standing by one another. The scholarship fund showed what kind of person Jamal was and how strong his community was, and it became a symbol of hope and a promise for a brighter future. So how about y'all? If y'all got a story about how one person's kindness made a big difference in a community, make sure you share in the comments section down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll catch y'all in the next video.